Dungeon Masters of Reddit, what was the most troublesome PC you had to DM for and how did they die? This is one that I kind of engineered as a member of the party, rather than the DM alone. I played in a group with a paladin who just refused to agree with the party about anything. Sometimes it made sense for a lawful good paladin. Sometimes it was way over the top. He was getting on everyone's nerves, but I was playing as a thief, and we were leveraging that to get some small kicks out of upsetting his character. The last straw for me was after we finished up some minor quest to stop a string of thefts and burglaries for a city. In the end, it was a little kid with a ring of invisibility, who we caught. The magistrate, or whoever the legal authority for the city was, decided the kid would go in the stocks for a week or something as his punishment. Our paladin would not agree to that, and insisted on chopping off the kid's hands. We all disagreed, saying this was a bad idea. The DM explained that this was neither lawful nor good, and he was at risk of losing his powers. In the end he did it anyway. Our reward for the job was the ring, and he immediately fought with the group about who should get it. He felt that it should be his. The rest of the group thought the sneaky rogue, me, should get it. In the end we agreed to some compromise where we would both have it at times. The next time we stopped to rest, I passed the DM a note that said at the next opportunity, I would like to sneak off from the group and buy or have made a gold ring that looks like our new ring. The DM right away said I could do that tonight. No problem. Later down the road, we ran into a dying NPC who had been attacked by raiders. We were on a time sensitive quest and could not get sidetracked. The paladin insisted that it was his, and by extension our, duty to help them and stop the raiders. This was the final disagreement, to the point that he said he was going to split from the group and challenge them alone. We said that was fine, but when we wanted to leave he insisted that he get the ring. The group said no, if he was leaving he could not have it. I calmly said that he could take it, he was going to need all the help he could get. You can see where this is going. He was slaughtered by the bandits, and could not figure out how they were able to get him at all. He sat and pouted in the corner until our next combat. When I used the ring he called me out, saying I had given the ring to him. The DM and I explained that I gave him a ring but not the ring. That is the sneakiest plan that I've ever heard. Standard D&D, standard character creation, standard weapons. I pull out my AK-47. I read dragon flies down from the sky and eats you. Wait, that's not fair. There was no dragon. Points to character sheet that lists chest armor, T-34. I wanna see him try. My friend plays a character he calls the Cleric of Love. Basically the idea is that if you get some damage and need a minor healing spell, he gives your character a hug or a kiss, something along those lines. We thought it was kinda cute at first. However, the more damage stronger the healing spell needed meant that the further it went. It got super creepy. One time he rolled successfully to resurrect another character. The guy decided to play it like full on necrophilia the guy to life. At one point he wanted to cast a heal on himself. I was going to let this slide until he RP'd that his character pulled his pants down and started jacking it. He failed the roll. Character ripped his own dong off through clumsy masturbation and died from the damage. The rest of the party left his body bleeding from the crotch for giant rats to find. Oh my god, that's ridiculously funny, thank you for making my evening. Had a player try to use a spell he didn't have to target something the spell couldn't target and achieve an effect that the spell couldn't achieve. He then lost his mind and rage quit the group when I denied him. We were going to do an online Pathfinder campaign. For those that don't know, Pathfinder is essentially D&D with some modified rules. This player was stuck between wanting to play a druid or a ranger and eventually decided that he would multi-class. We were starting at level 1. He was talking with me one day before our campaign was going to start and let me in on his master plan. I had allowed him his ranger companion as a non-combat pet and declared that the pet would become combat capable once he had the appropriate ranger level. I felt that this made more sense than a pet that he had no previous relationship with suddenly showing up when he leveled. He therefore was starting play as a druid with a non-combative wolf pup. He explained that as soon as the game started he was going to use the druid spell Wild Shape to magically age his ranger wolf pup and make it a more formidable and combat ready beast. I explained to him that this wouldn't work because of the following. 1. His character didn't have the spell Wild Shape yet. 2. Wild Shape is a personal spell and can only be used on yourself, i.e. you can't target something with it. 3. Wild Shape does not magically age anything. He threw a fit, claiming that his last DM let him do whatever he wanted because his last DM understood the rules better. I explained that we were indeed using the rules, and that he couldn't use a spell that he didn't have to target something the spell couldn't target and achieve an effect that the spell couldn't achieve. He threatened to quit the group and I suggested that it sounded like that would be a good idea. So he raja quit and stopped talking to me. We'd been online playing the same games for a while and had a decent friendship. After I had run a few sessions he started talking to the other players and asking them about how horrible the sessions were being run by a DM that doesn't know anything. He was apparently told that they were going really well and he shouldn't have quit. He was sending messages to people in our online gaming community, some of which weren't even involved in the Pathfinder campaign, saying that I should be removed from the group because I wasn't letting him play. He was told by a few people to stop bothering them and he eventually quit the online gaming group completely. Heck, why not just use light to turn the castle into an enchanted sword and shoot the bad guy with it? In high school I had sweet gig babysitting family friends' kids. The oldest was in middle school and the youngest was in 4th grade. The parents hung out and drank margaritas while I ran the game. I got paid for it too, so no real complaints. There was one kid who was hitting his edgelord phase a little early. He played a wizard, would constantly do things just to spite the party's paladin. He'd steal from other characters while they slept, fireball into the melee and injure as many friends as enemies, and other sorts of selfish dicky. I've played with worse people, but never anyone who enjoyed being as much of a dong to their fellow players, their real life friends, as much of this guy. Whenever he got away with it, he'd giggle too, and taunt the player whose character he duped for the next 15 minutes. More than once I had to stop another kid from cold cocking him. Because this was essentially babysitting, I wasn't allowed to kill anyone or ask them to leave, but he'd frequently get KO'd. I had to talk to him about his behavior after every game. Once he stole the paladin's magic sword and the other party members knocked him out and threw him in a sack. The closest I got to letting actually die was when they entered a magic forest. I made it clear the forest was magic. They felt like they were being watched. The path they just walked down would be gone if they turned around. Generic, enchanted living forest stuff. The player decided to light an arrow on fire and shoot it into a tree. I gave him several chances to stop and wanted to reiterate again that the forest was watching him. He went ahead and shot the flaming arrow, and trees and dryads burst out of the foliage to attack him. He begged the party for help, but understandably they told him he had dug his own grave. There was also the incident with a cat. We played in an arboretum in the problem player's backyard. One day a cat appeared in the problem player and the cleric left the table to chase it around the yard. They would use little plastic kiddie chairs to corner it and hiss at it until it ran away again. After 10 minutes of this, the cat got fed the frick up and scratched his face. He wept and ran to his mother and the game was put on hold. I found out later from his dad that the cat belonged to a neighbor, was known to be bad-tempered to begin with, and this was not the first time the problem player had been badly scratched after tormenting it. LOL, that cat's not bad-tempered, it just gets fricked with a lot. Eric. The generic cleric was played by my buddy Eric. He went and bought the module in secret and suddenly started guessing riddles and traps really well. I got suspicious, so I started arbitrarily switching a few things, like room numbers and trap triggers before each game, and he suddenly went from very successful to apparently the worst player in the world. He took a 100 fall shortly thereafter and somehow managed to roll all 1s and 2s and survived. Lucky, lucky, lucky. He died when real life Eric crashed his car into a bridge column. RIP. Eric the generic cleric. No res spells for him. Well, that escalated quickly. Sorry about your friend. I once had a player who often did quite silly things, much to the bemusement of the other PCs. I personally had no problems as a GM with his character being lighthearted and mildly silly, but I still remember the story of the exhaust pipe. Now, to set the scene, the party had at this point been smuggling illegal weapons, which the rulers of the star system they were doing it in did not take kindly to. The session began with the party's cover being blown on a space station they were on, and the party trying to escape whilst being chased by the station guard. The party had managed to evade the guards, and had just made their way to the loading bays. It was at this point that it happened. When I was describing the loading bay, I mentioned that there was a futuristic version of a forklift truck that was currently idling, its operator abandoning it when the alarms went off. The player said I go up to the forklift truck, and we knew something stupid was going to happen. I roll with it and say cool. You go up to the forklift truck and I ask him what he wants to do. At this point, with his grin, the rest of the party knew something stupid was going to happen. I stick my dong in the exhaust pipe. The rest of the party groans, but I roll with it, having gotten slightly fed up of his nonsense. Cool, you stick your dong in the exhaust pipe, I say. Now I'm not an expert on exhaust pipe, nor the act of sticking your dong in them, but I do know that exhaust pipes get dang hot. Hot enough, say, to melt flesh to it. Cool, what do you want to do now, I ask with a grin on my face. The rest of the party are mildly worried now. Not at this, but the fact that I was grinning at something so stupid. They knew something was up, and I think the player did too. I pull it out and run, he says, to which I responded, doesn't budge. It seems like you're stuck, I say. At this point some more guards burst through the doors, much to the chagrin of the other party members. Now for some ungodly reason the rest of the party had some attachment to Jack McForklift Dick, so after a couple of minutes of holding off waves of guards, they managed to cut off the exhaust pipe. Instead of going for the easier option of cutting off the other pipe, the party eventually manages to escape with their loot of a new exhaust pipe and its new owner. That campaign eventually died due to real life commitment, but from that day onward he never did something that stupid, as anytime he started to do something stupid another party member would always manage to slip the words exhaust or pipe into the sentence, at which point he'd stop talking about something stupid and actually do something sensible. After a few more campaigns he eventually started being more serious and being a pretty good ARPer, but even to this day our group still will mention exhaust pipes every now and then. I was, the troublesome PC LOL. This was back in the day of first edition D&D and we were playing a Forgotten Realms campaign. Even did the awful Shadow Dale trilogy to convert to second edition at one point. Never do that. Anyway, I was playing a chaotic nutso thief who had, through circumstances I no longer recall, acquired a magical amulet of Arachnida. Through the use of a wish, he made the abilities from it a genetic trait and thus his new race was born, the Spider Gnome. He was a Tinker Gnome before. One of the abilities he gained from this was Spider Climb at will, which he used constantly, especially in dungeons. His standard MO was to constantly remain on the ceiling and travel that way to scout ahead, assuming he was less likely to set off traps that way. Keep in mind that this char was played long term and was fairly high level, so we go into a dungeon of some sort, nothing exceptional. My character goes up on the ceiling and scouts ahead. I miss a roll and somehow my character climbs right into a lurker above, which proceeds to frick my character's crap up. The party finally manages to save him, but he's now at 0 HP and bleeding. They see a bench against a wall and decide to set him on the bench to dress his wounds and heal him up. The bench was a mimic. Killed the character immediately. Was the absolutely best setup for a character I've ever seen. I can only aspire to the heights that particular DM achieved. Spider Gnome. Spider Gnome does whatever a spider can. Well, they're not dead yet, but the very first session we played they told me they were going to play Lawful Good, an hour and some combat later, and they've got a captured slaver that they'd just finished interrogating. This is where a Lawful Good player would, alert the law. Instead, the player opted to crucify the slaver on the wall of his home. That's not Lawful Good. No, it's okay. I have an alternate personality which comes out when I'm mad. Other highlights include kidnapping, murder for hire, intimidating people into joining the armed forces, just a slew of castrations, punching a hole in the boat the party was in, large-scale genocide, small-scale genocide, allowing a demon to consume a man's soul, getting charmed people drunk for the heck of it, providing H to criminals, drugging people, 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 drugging. Sucker still swears they're lawful good. That's not a bad idea actually. I would make him CN or something on paper, but allow him to play LG without penalties. Just roll with the split alignment personality thing. He can act and believe he's LG, but a LG only magic item wouldn't work for him. Then give him a CE magic weapon that works for him, but his LG side is disgusted by its evilness. I was the troublesome PC, as a chaotic neutral 4 feet tall rogue with a short temper and a big attitude. Upon reaching the first town, the poison vendor called me cute, so I opted to assassinate her in the middle of the street. I rolled an 18 for the assassination, efficiently cutting her throat. The DM then got a decent perception check on for the market guards, so I needed a decent roll to hide. I managed to roll a nat 1. Grabbed the recently severed head and curled into a ball in the middle of the street. Needless to say, I was very quickly attacked, beaten, bloodied and bruised. I was forced to spend the rest of the campaign trying to pick the lock in our druid's cage. Chaotic neutral 4 feet tall rogue with a short temper and a big attitude. Jesus Christ, the word troublesome isn't adequate. Had a long-time player in a D&D campaign who would regularly not pay attention, which led to him screwing over the group a few times and eventually got him killed. We'll call the player Carl. In one example, the party was fleeing from a local town because they had gotten into a fight with one of the local lord's men and killed him. While on the road out of town, they were approached by several of the local lord's men who rode up on horseback. The party was outnumbered even though many of the lord's men appeared young and inexperienced. Essentially, the player's party of level 3s were facing a level 5 lieutenant and about 5 level 1 guards. They demanded to know if they were involved in the death of their comrade and wanted to take the party in for questioning. The mouthpiece for the group decided to try a bluff check and rolled a natural 20. I described the Lord's men's reactions as relaxing in their saddles and in general looking a lot less aggressive. The leader of the Lord's men eventually relaxed as well and became convinced the group was not the group he was looking for. He even asked them to keep an eye out for any suspicious persons. I asked the other players if they were going to do anything. Everyone else was happy with the outcome and said they weren't going to interfere. I looked at Carl and asked him if he was going to do anything. He didn't respond and continued to flip through one of the D&D books. I raised my voice a little and said, "Carl, the lieutenant is in front of you. I need to know if you're going to do anything." He looked up, said I rolled a hit and rolled his damage dice before leaning back on the couch and going back to flipping through the book while the other players stared at him. Carl and another PC were killed in the ensuing fight while the rest of the party, who had abstained from the fight, was taken in for questioning before being released. My little brother took a 14th level paladin to Ravenloft and then whined about being picked on because of the penalties incurred by the campaign setting. He actually quit the game last week because of this. He will be 39 in less than 2 weeks. Let me tell you the ballads of Captain Nope and Uncle Touchy. Captain Nope and I played together many times, both as DM and fellow PC. The moniker comes from his refusal to enter any situation that has danger or risk. Enter the creepy tower? Nope. Frick that. This guy would then pout and rage quit if things didn't go his way. While playing through Tomb of Horrors that a buddy was deeming, he went through a portal that sent him and a fellow PC back to the beginning, but naked and without possessions. Rage quit. Another time he got paralyzed and went outside and smoked his pipe and refused to roll his saves. He never died because he ran away from everything and rage quit constantly. He got banned from our games because everyone was tired of his crap and having him hold the sessions hostage. Uncle Touchy was a random person that joined a new game through a local FB group. Older than us, played the worst wizard ever. If he missed with a spell he would pout, sulk and become envious of other players who were having more success in combat encounters. Another player was min-maxing a fighter into almost godlike brokenness. Uncle Touchy took this as a personal affront and would post these rambling tirades on the FB group, always threatening to quit the game. Word got out that he was a convicted sex offender, and sure as crap he was on the local pederast list. Coincidentally, this info came out right when he posted another diatribe about the fighter and threatened to quit. Everyone was through coddling him and was now uncomfortable with his past, so we told him if he was bothered so much he should quit, and he did. Later on in the campaign we investigated a series of mysterious disappearances of children. The DM brought Uncle Touchy back as a villain. Most satisfying combat encounter ever. Well, there was this one character who convinced all the other characters to kill a guard and make a meat toboggan out of his body. Try to climb a gate using the aforementioned guard's entrails. or with an entrail rope, and then he started attacking the other PCs and doing other crazy things, which made the others do crazy things. I had to kill him and the others off with a horde of red dragons. Maybe it was overkill, but it was worth it. Meet Toboggan. Dibs on that band's name. My first time playing D&D, and I'm playing with some good friends who are old hands at it. The DM is a friend's dad who has played D&D since he was a child. He is also a medieval reenactor. He owns a set of full plate. He's awesome. One of our friends is a chaotic neutral human rogue. We just finished character creation, and we head into the tavern at the beginning of the game. The constable asks what we're doing. I mean, come on. A group of armed men just walked into a bar. For context, he had asked the DM as an aside if he could tamper with maps. Specifically, draw raccoons all over them. He also openly told us he planned on stealing our stuff while we slept, selling it off, and leaving the party. So we get into the bar. I begin to make a casual reply about being adventurers, etc etc. Jay, whose player name is Loki the Trickster God, yells "Die bastard" and throws a knife at the constable, misses him, and hits the important NPCs we were supposed to talk to. They come in and beat the crap out of Jay. Our warrior in full armor has a crossbow and such low agility that when he goes to save Jay with a bolt, he narrowly avoids shooting himself in the face with said crossbow. Our cleric, L, sits in wild disbelief. I mean, while I'm sitting at the bar watching all this go down. After Jay and the warrior are both subdued, the constable questions me. I rolled persuasion twice to convince him I'm not with them, and then roll again and end up joining the city guard. I mostly round up drunks. Our cleric joins the local healers and has a successful career. Our warrior fights back against the constable and gets executed. Jay gets thrown in jail. Our DM had him roll for luck for a solid 5 minutes to see if rats would eat his eyes that day. Each roll was a different day. TL. DR. Chaotic neutral rogue throws a knife at constable. Gets eyes eaten by rats. Warrior almost shoots self with a crossbow. I join the city guard. Currently playing with a PC who found a dangerous crystal on a necromancer. He insists on capturing every NPC and doing science experiments on them to see the full potential and effects on different races and creatures. So far he has had several failed tests ending in prematurely killing several quest important people. He is alive but death is inevitable. Not a DM, but I think I was the PC. I played a Trent named Iggy, but everyone called me Twiggy. I was a normal player character except for one thing. I was deathly afraid of fire. If I so much as saw fire during an encounter, I went into tree mode. This meant I pretended to be a tree and didn't move. Well, you mark 20,600. That doesn't sound too bad. Well, it could have been pretty good, but we had a fire mage. During an encounter, one of us was useless all the time. I later died when we set up camp and a spark from the fire jumped on me. I rolled a 1. Every member of the group had that title at some point. Even me when I take a break from DMing. The martial player loves chain tripping, ubakudges, and will shaping into a 12-headed cryohydra. The dragon player has a thing for empowered maximized black tentacles, going so far as to call them spiked tentacles of forced intrusion after the Oots comic. The necromancer player loves finding new ways to use every part of the buffalo. He once filled a whale with black sand and gunpowder and went Hindenburg on a mining camp. I have an obsession with spreadsheet characters. Even I don't know what exactly I'm carrying on my person in most games, and I play races that don't eat sleep breathe so I can butt pull inventions overnight. I love the whale Hindenburg idea. Sounds like the necromancer's a fun player. I had set up the world, or at least as far as the PCs were concerned, to be monotheistic and reskinned all the good gods into various saints of the religion. The only cleric in the party rolled up a CN heretic dwarf priest who had crafted a metal skull to cover his hideously scarred face. His backstory said the church caused his suffering and he was on a crusade to murder them in the name of his god. The other players rolled with normal PCs for the setting, and when confronted WTH this abomination, they promptly turned him in for a reward. Alright, I got this. One of my first attempts at DMing was with my fraternity brothers. We had 5 players, the majestic dwarf paladin who acted as the leader of the group, the halfling rogue who was chaotic neutral, bordering on chaotic evil, the human barbarian who loved to punch things while thinking he was a magician, and couple others. Approximately 30 minutes into the second session of the campaign, the party was following the trail of a goblin raiding party into what appeared to be a now abandoned farming village about 20 clicks from the port town. After entering the village, the halfling rogue, let's call him R, walked to the local inn after rolling a decent perception check and hearing a faint noise. Before the rest of the party even realized he had left, they hear the thwack of a crossbow firing and striking something rather fleshy. Of course, there was also the screaming. The dwarf Pally, let's call him W, ran into the inn only to find what appears to be an old man laying in a pile of his own blood, with a mass of terrified villagers barely visible behind a makeshift wooden barricade. W quickly uses an aura of calming while the barbarian, D, tries unsuccessfully to stop the old man's bleeding. The villagers, unaffected by the calming aura, start to throw kitchen knives and other household objects at R, accusing him of murdering their village elder, who happened to be a very important NPC for the quest I was about to send them on. R looks me square in the eyes and says, I want to roll for a bluff check. He nat 1s. I promise he wasn't the village elder. He's a goblin wearing the village elder's face. Following that, he stumbles and the village elder's ring and pocket watch fall from R's grip. Realizing that he was completely fricked, in part because of the disgusted face of W, who is lawful good, R proceeds to make a mad dash for the window. Not having any non-lethal weapons on hand, W decides to throw one of his hand axes at R in hopes of temporarily crippling him so that he can be brought to justice. Unfortunately for R, W also rolled a nat 1 on his attack. Instead of clipping R in the leg, as was intended, the axe firmly embeds itself between his shoulder blades, leaving him permanently paralyzed from the waist down. While not dead, he quickly realized that his hopes and dreams for the rest of his life just vanished before him, and slit his own throat. The beauty of this is that I didn't have to do much of anything. The party worked it out all on their own. It's now become a house rule in our gaming group for character creation. 1. Chaotic. 2. Neutral. 3. Rogue. 4. Drow Tiefling. 5. First time player. You may pick 2 of these. 3 if the DM really trusts you. I really wish I could say otherwise, but I've honestly never seen this lot in combination played well. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.